Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show, broadcast here on the Spirituality Gone Wild Network station, soon to be Roku channel. We are growing, we are expanding, we are a collection of individual co-creators who are committed to making the human experience a better place for all. So that's what spirituality is all about. Now, what's American Gumption all about? Well, American Gumption is my brand of taking things on the road and telling good stories, telling happy stories, telling the story of ordinary individuals who are living extraordinary lives. So that's the purpose of the American Gumption Show and the Spirituality Gone Wild channel that I'm partnered with. And here we are on January 8th, Friday, and it happens to be show number 104. So into our 6th month here at the American Gumption Morning Show. Alrighty, so today I have a guest, Doug Neilsen. He's going to join us at about 15 past the hour, as typically happens when a guest is on the show. And Doug will be with us, as I said, and he's going to talk about, we're going to have a different kind of a conversation. We'll tell a little bit about Doug's story and who he is. And in my monologue, I'm going to share a little bit more about, how Doug and I got to know each other. But basically, we're going to end up talking about Victor Frankl, the life and the philosophy and the teachings of Victor Frankl. So if you don't know who Victor Frankl is, you're in for a treat. And if you do, you'll probably learn something new, because Victor Frankl is he's a deep thinker. He's a guy who, first pass, you read his stuff and takes you, it's simple, and yet there's a lot of depth to it. So anyway, that's coming up with Doug. That'll be the main conversation. Now, my monologue today is going to be choice. And I've spoken about choice many times before, but it has to do with the foundation of what Gumption is all about. It's the second principle, or the second life lesson from the movies of the life lesson, Forrest Gump. And as I was preparing for the show, I realized that Victor Frankl and his teachings and the way he came into my life, when he did come into my life, really is foundational. His whole idea of choice is really what I'm talking about with Gumption. And Gumption really is a choice. So that's why I'm going to repeat this lesson, although, like I said, it's going to have a little different thing. So we can never understand too much about our choices. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and just, I forgot to tell you what's coming up. So today's Friday, of course. And let me explain. I didn't do a live show yesterday. I ended up doing an interview, and that interview is going to air next Friday. Flashpoint TV. Austin Haynes, who's been a guest here on the show 2 different times, and so I went over to a studio in New Jersey and did we recorded the interview, and it's and I'll talk about it, what the interview is all about, but I'm going to let the interview speak for itself, because it really frames things in a way about my particular story and my journey in life in a way that hasn't been done before. So that'll be coming up live next Friday sometime. I forget what time it actually airs, but I'll have announcements about that. And then, of course, I'll end up having that on my website shortly thereafter, and talk about it in greater detail. So that's why I wasn't here yesterday. Alrighty. Now, so now next week, Monday, I do not have a guest scheduled for Monday, but I do plan to do a show. So I may do a monologue segment. Sometimes I do a monologue only. Haven't done one of those for a while, and so that might happen on Monday. We'll just wait and see what happens that way. Tuesday, Amy Van Linge is going to join us. Amy Van Linge, and she is a life coach, a speaker. She is an advocate for conscious parenting, and she is also a spiritual adventurer, a lovely young lady who is going to be with us on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, Tamara Oviat, speaker, author, healer. Her particular brand of healing is sacred activations, and we'll get into them, but the very, very short version of it is like, it's kind of like a download. It's like a reprogramming of your body. And she'll share her 30-year journey, but really it was only in the last 8 years when this all kind of came to her, and what she's been doing with her life since then. So fascinating story. Tamra Oviatt on Wednesday, sacred activations. Alrighty, so that's that. Now let's just go ahead and switch gears. Let's jump into my monologue, which today I guess I said it's going to be about choice. And the 3 life lessons from the movie Forrest Gump are the opportunities that come into your life. Opportunities, the feather that floats in at the beginning of the movie, lands at the foot of Forrest Gump, and he picks it up. That's number 1 life lesson. Number 2 life lesson is the choices that we make. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, but I say life is like a box of chocolates. You get to choose whatever chocolate you want, and you get to choose whatever life you want. And I'll talk about that more, but the 3 life lessons, and then the shoe, the Nike shoe, is the journey of life. So the opportunities, the feather, the choices, the chocolate box, and the shoe is the journey of life, because we ultimately just keep kind of recycling through the same learning experiences that we have throughout our life. And so learning to enjoy that the journey of the contrast that we have, and then the opportunities and the choices, and really enjoying to learn to love and appreciate that experience of the journey is what it's all about. So what happened to me personally back in 2010 is I was in that process of ending my 15-year career with Bubba Gump Shrimp, being the Forrest Gump impersonator, and I had already made the choice probably in 2006-07 timeframe that I was going to become a speaker, and I was going to somehow take the experience that I had as Forrest Gump and turn it into a speaking business. So in 2010, I end up joining the National Speakers Association, and I also joined the Mountain West chapter. That was down in Salt Lake City, 470 miles door to door from where they held their monthly meetings. And I ended up joining the chapter, and initially didn't go down very much because I thought, that's crazy, I'm not going down there. And then I ended up going down once or twice, and then got involved and met the people, and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is really this felt like my people, and I wanted to be part of that. So I ended up joining the chapter, and I was invited to be a member of the board. And when I became a board member, the president of the year that I joined as a new board member was our guest today, Doug Neilsen. And so Doug ends up gifting me a couple of books, and I'll do a quick screen share here. Let's see. And the first book he gives us, it gives the board members, didn't just give it to me, gave it to everybody. And he says, it's Man's Search for Meaning, Victor Frankl. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. Here's a guy who gives he gave me a book, and it was like, it was like a book. It wasn't like he gave you a brick of gold, but I took like a special meaning of it. Like I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is, he took the time to want to share a book that had a profound impact on him with the other people that he was going to be working with, the other board members. And he thought, maybe you'll get something out of it. I don't know what he was thinking at the time he did it, but that's how I interpreted this. And so I ended up taking the book home, and I read it because I thought, I thought, hey, it's serendipitous. It was not a coincidence. I was supposed to read this. Well, anyway, it had a profound impact on me. And the reason why it had an impact on me was because I was trying to develop my message. The weird part about, I said, oh, I'll just become a speaker. And what had happened, I had this great experience as Forrest Gump and meeting people, and I loved entertaining, and all of that was great. And there was lots of wonderful messages from the movie. It resonated with people. People loved it. And so I thought, well, I'll just turn this into some kind of a message. So what happened though, is I ended up like saying, okay, I'm a speaker, and I joined the Speakers Association, and I went out and started speaking, and I realized that I really didn't have a message. I was more of a storyteller and almost like kind kind of more like a comedian telling a bunch of silly little gag things as opposed to, having any kind of purpose or meaning to it. And so as I got more involved with the organization, I came to realize that I needed to, develop more of a coherent overall message, which was perfectly fine. I understood that and I embraced it, but I also went, oh my gosh, this is actually harder than I thought. And what it really ended up doing was forcing me to decide what I believed personally. And so it wasn't just like make up a message and tie it in with the movie and that sort of thing. It was like, I got to decide what I believe. And to do that, you end up having to look in the mirror and you have to, like analyze your beliefs and, the way you've been living your life and go, do I want to continue to do this or do I want to change? And what beliefs do I have from my past that I'll keep? And which beliefs do I need to discard? And when you discard something, you have room for new beliefs, and what new beliefs need to come in and fill that space. So as I read Man's Search for Meaning, I think that the whole idea of choice became crystal clear to me. And so life lesson number 2 from the movie is choice. Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Ironically, that never resonated as I was starting to, it's a great line for the movie and everybody knows it. And, that's wonderful. But as I started really digging deep into what my beliefs were, I was like, life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Well, then if that's true, then we don't have any control. Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And so I was like, no, life's like a box of chocolates. You get to choose whatever chocolate you want. And life's like a box of chocolates. You get to choose the life you want. Life's like a box of chocolates. You get to choose the life you want. And I think that this book, Man's Search for Meaning, I read it at that same time that I was, coming to this realization and conclusion. And so it was very, very impactful. And I appreciated the fact that, that here Doug just threw this book at me and said, hey, you might like this. And I ended up reading it. And not only did I like it, but I took a lot of meaning from it. And so the 3 principles of Gumption are the way you taking responsibility for your thoughts, your actions, and your interactions with others. So, Gumption is all about taking responsibility for the way you think, for the way you act, and for the way you interact with other people. Personal responsibility for all 3 of those: thoughts, actions, interactions. And ultimately, every one of those becomes a choice. You have a choice on whether you want to be responsible for the way you think, or and you want to be responsible for the way you act, the way you just go about doing, life in general, and then the way you interact specifically with other people, you become responsible for those, and that becomes a choice because you have to give up victimhood, blame, that whole thing. You can't, if you're going to be responsible for the way you interact with others, well, you can't hold them responsible. You can't blame them for your own behavior at that point. So all that was happening, like I said, back in 2010, 11, 12, when I was really figuring all this out and deciding what it was that I stood for. And so, really those are the teachings of, those core principles of Gumption are really very, very similar to what Victor Frankl talked about and what he, shared with, his life and what he believed. Of course, his life was dramatically different than mine. And I'm going to let Doug come on and tell the story of, who he was. And then we have a series of quotes that we picked out that we'll share and, talk about and go through it. But the last thing I want to just say is that everything is a choice, and how we respond, and responding versus reacting. And this is like a key principle for me. This was the key thing that I learned from Victor Frankl. And there was like a little bit of a space after like a stimulation comes in, after something happens, then we have a choice. And he calls it the space. Victor Frankl calls it the space. And we get to decide how we're going to respond to it. And we respond when we're in a conscious level, and we give that space, that little bit of space to think and respond. Or we react where we don't give any space and we just use our subconscious to go ahead and, do what we end up doing. And usually our reactions, all of our reactions come from the subconscious level as opposed to the conscious level. So anyway, I'm hoping Doug's going to explain this better than I can. I'm trying, but anyway, it's all good. So that is that. All right, I see Doug is there in the green room, warmed up. Hopefully they've been taking good care of him back there. Let's see if we can. Let's stop this screen share for at least a second. Here we go. Let's bring Doug on board. Doug Neilsen, are you with us? Here we go. How you doing? Whoops, I'm not hearing you. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Why are you muted? Huh?
There we go.
Hi.
Good morning to you, Steve.
It's been a while. We've kept in touch over the 10 years, but we haven't had a Zoom to Zoom face-to-face meeting ever, and we haven't had a face-to-face meeting in at least 5 years or more. And good to see you again. How you been?
Hey, I tell you what, better than I deserve. I've been so excited to be on this with you today. I tell you what, I just woke up and I'm just so excited, and it's so neat to see you, Steve. You've just stayed this course and talk about waves of goodness. I mean, this show and what you're doing and the impact that you're having, just the thought as I was listening to your opening monologue there, holy smokes, there is a war on hope, and it's being replaced with this despair and this uncertainty. And I don't think there's a better time to be having your show out there making a difference. Just these waves going out, and you carrying that light like you do. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. So, we'll get into this, and we'll talk about. Now, I have two rules at the beginning of the show, or at least at the beginning of when I bring a guest on. And the first thing is that I like to read a little bio or intro about who you are, and then I have a theme song which is called the First Time Guest Theme Song because I couldn't come up with a better name. And I like to play that. So if you come back sometime later in the year and rejoin us, we won't play the song. So this is like a one-time deal. Is that
initiation? Right?
Exactly. So, well, let me go ahead and tell people who you are. Let me just do a quick little screen adjustment there. Well, there we go. We can see people a little better. We can see us. So, who is Doug Neilsen? Doug is a certified speaking professional, author, and psychotherapist with more than 20 years experience helping overstretched professionals gain clarity, take ownership, and create desired outcomes personally and professionally. You've been helping people for a long time. It's probably closer to 30 years. He is the author of the best-selling book, Take Life by the Helm, Proven Strategies for Gaining Control. I like that. Take Life by the Helm, Proven Strategies for Gaining Control. If someone's not riding the ship, steering the ship, it's all over the place. Fulfillment for Doug is when he is able to help individuals and organizations increase their bottom line by solving the nagging issues that hold them back and their teams back. Doug has been strongly influenced by the writings of Victor Frankl, and specifically Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, originally published back in 1959. Man, the year after I was born. In fact, Doug gifted me the book when I joined the board of directors at the National Speakers Association Mountain West chapter the same year that Doug was the chapter's president. Doug has a black belt in karate and is the proud father of 4. Doug Neilsen, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, indeed.
So, the song. I got to play the song. There we go. All right, here it is. Here it is. Whoops. Boy, I'm having a little hesitation and I'm clicking twice. So I'm starting it and stopping it. Now I'm going to just click it once.
There you go.
Be patient, like Serenity Now. And let's try it one more time. Here we go, the song. All righty. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a show before?
Hey, that is a first. And I got to tell you, I feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Well, good. So yeah, we should talk just a little bit about, when we met, because I was like brand new in the speaking world, and really I had more desire to be a speaker than actually experience of being a speaker. And you were becoming the president, and the chapter was kind of, small, like a lot smaller than it is today. And, I just joined the chapter, and they're like, hey, you want to be on the board? I kind of figured out that, didn't have very many people that were willing or able to do it. So any fresh bloods, like, throw them right in there. And here I thought I was being special, and it was just like, oh my gosh, another body, throw them in there. So anyway, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot from you, and I appreciated the fact that when we met as a board, you gave out the books, you shared them with us, and I just thought that was pretty neat. I was like, other people had done it, so I'm sure people had done that same thing to you. But maybe just talk a little bit about the spirit of the camaraderie that the Speakers Association provided for people like you and me.
Yeah, it was it was a crazy time in my world when I was slated to be the president. My marriage of 22 years, wife was going a different value direction and whatnot. And my life at that time was just imploding. And it couldn't have been a worse time to be the president for me personally. However, like a Brad Barton before me and several different presidents had been building this foundation, which now our chapter has exploded, right? And I think due in part to folks like you came on and you've served and you have made a difference there in a huge way. It was one of those moments in life, right, where you have an earthquake, where, at 18 years of age, you plan your life out and this is how it's supposed to go, right? And yet you ask any 18-year-old now who's in their 40s, hey, did life turn out the way you thought it would be? Absolutely right. Not. I haven't seen that. And if they say yes, then we probably need to drug test them. But the point is, it didn't. And here, this life was imploding on me. And talk about an opportunity. Previous to that, that was about 2012. Previous to that, I had a conversation, 1997, with Victor Frankl, and excuse me. And that conversation forever changed my life. It took me a long time to track him down. Thought he was going to come to this evolution of psychotherapy. He didn't. He was in his 90s. Long story short, a lot of shucking and jiving. I was able to have a conversation with him, and it really brought to light what you were talking about, these principles, and something tweaked inside of me, because in our biggest despair moments, we have these tectonic shifts in life. And either they will open us up for meaning and purpose and feeling alive, or they will slowly help us die inside. So there you were, Steve, you came in and you helped rescue me. It actually turned out to be an amazing year. And when, it's this notion that Victor Frankl talks about, it's not suffering that will destroy us. It's not suffering that will destroy us, because we all suffer, but it is suffering without meaning. It is suffering without meaning that can destroy us. And to be able to find in your greatest challenge right now in life, how do you find meaning? Sometimes it's easier to find, and other times it takes a long time, and you just got to keep walking into the darkness, waiting for that light to come, hoping for that light to come. So it was a fun year, and it was a big shift for me. There were definitely the downs and the griefs, and yet it was, I would say, probably the biggest growth year of my life.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about this at the time that you were going through personally, because I was just on my own, adventure of trying to figure out where I was, professionally, and the realization that I needed to do, my own inner work if I was going to actually be able to speak with any kind of authenticity and authority about, what I wanted to do. And so, I didn't even, I was like so wrapped up in my own world that I didn't even notice what was going on in, your world. And it's not something that, people, you throw out there publicly willy nilly. So anyway, but it was a good time. And I do, the book thing, it influenced me. So I want to just say thank you, because I needed that at the time. And it was like, kind of like I went home and I thought, okay, here, this guy gave me this book and there must be a reason for it. And I ended up reading it. And I just want to say thank you, because it really is the foundation. And look, Victor Frankl, what he talks about, many, many others have talked about, but, we talk about things in different ways. Different teachers, healers, all have the same kind of message, but they package it in a way that, people are able to hear at different times of their lives, or different people hear it at different times, and it becomes important. So.
Absolutely. And I recommend, I know you showed the book already, and I would recommend, if any of your listeners haven't read this book, get the book. If you hate to read, get the book and read it. If you don't know how to read, learn to read, get the book and read it, right? And then I recommend thereafter, highlight it. And then at the beginning of every new year, go through your highlights. It's not a speed read. It's not this, it's not this warm and fuzzy, but it talks about, and I think this is the whole goal of us as humans. It's that spirit to rise above. Our favorite movies, our favorite stories are these stories of people who, against all odds, despite everything, say, I'm going to find a way through this thing, right? I'm going to find a way through this. I don't know exactly how, but I will, just for today, find a way to get through this thing. And I think that's why the book is so inspiring. At one of my life's struggle points, right? That was like, where are you going to go? Doug, where are you going to head? Because I think like the rock band REO Speedwagon, the great philosophers, right? If you're tired of the same old story, it's time to turn some pages. And meaning, like you're saying, hey, you get to choose your chocolate, right? I love how you spin that, because I think that's in the spirit of Victor Frankl. Yeah, things happen to us randomly, but we still get to choose how we respond to that. And in the story, oftentimes we can write ourselves the victim of our own story. Yep. And we take a time out and saying, hold on. You know what? It's not your environment. It's not your circumstances. It's not other people ultimately that dictate who you are. It is your thinking and the choices you make. It's the meaning you give these things. And you've got an option to choose that chocolate. And that's your choice. So, we get tired of saying, am I writing myself a victim in my own story? I am the only one, me, because there's villains, there's heroes, and there's victims. And it was like, I want to be the hero of my own story.
What's funny is we were, you were talking about your challenges at that time, and I was talking about my challenges. Well, let's, for the people watching who don't know Victor Frankl, would you take a few minutes and just tell the challenge that he faced in his life? Because that's actually a bigger challenge than you and I faced.
Yeah, well, interestingly, so Victor Frankl, the book is about his experiences in the concentration camp. And he is an MD, he's a psychiatrist, and he's also Jewish. And this is during World War II. This is when the Nazis were taking over the world. And he was married at the time. His wife was pregnant. He has these incredible relationships and with his family and whatnot. Well, the war ensues. Ultimately, Victor, as a young psychiatrist, a young MD, is working on his philosophies of how to look at life and how to make life. Well, then he is hurled into the death camp systems, in Auschwitz, that's in Poland, and Dachau in Germany. And Victor, thrown into these death camps, he wasn't in there just for a few months. It wasn't in there just for a year, or he was in there for 3 years. Over 3 years, he lived his life in, I don't think there's any better way, unspeakable horror, just hell on this earth, unbelievable to even, it's hard to fathom how they treated them. It's hard to fathom to know that 6 million people were murdered, tortured, and unspeakable things that took place, that they did to them. And Victor Frankl finds himself in this situation, And again, against all odds, he saw incredible, horrific things, but he also got to see in the death camps amazing things, where that human spirit rose above, where he saw people who lost their will to live. And he really said, when you lose your will to live in a death camp, you die. It's over. You don't have medications. You don't have blankets. You don't have food. You have disease and pneumonia, and you just lost a toe to frostbite, and you just got kicked in the ribs, and you broke 3 ribs, and perhaps a punctured lung. Without hope, it's all over. And yet, Victor in this death camp, that's where hope. He said, you know what? You, the prison guards, if you want to hit me and beat me and starve me and take my whole family away from me, you can. I can't stop you. But you know what? I will not allow you. I will not allow you to take the one thing inside here, hope. You can't control how I think. I can find meaning. He had an opportunity to escape the death camp. They'd been plotting it for some time. And for whatever reason, Victor said, man, I just don't feel right about it. And I can't leave these people suffering here. I want to help. My hope is this thing's going to be over with and we get out. Well, incidentally, they left. They escaped. They were caught and killed. And Victor, he realized staying there that, you know what? It may be few of us in the death camp he witnessed, but it is possible, no matter the challenge, to change our thinking towards that, our attitude, and then therefore bring meaning to it. Because if you can bring meaning, and his meaning, at least in part, was, I will help ease the suffering of others, and I will not allow others to kill the hope inside of me. Despite everything that's going on, this pain is not in vain. If this life is just this random pain and we just get beat up, that's when people give up, as opposed to saying, I will find meaning. And so that's what the book really talks about his experience, but talks about just absolutely incredible spirit of saying, I'm going to get through this thing. And also meaning came in his life when he said, I can't wait to see my family again. I cannot wait. And he dreamed of that and dreamed of past memories that brought him hope today and meaning to keep fighting for tomorrow. Incidentally, they killed all of his family members, his wife, all his friends that he knew and called beloved. One sibling survived, and pretty cool story.
And I remember there was just one detail that stuck out with me, is that about a year or two before, there was an opportunity for him to essentially leave Germany with his wife, but his parents were elderly and he felt like he couldn't leave them. And they ended up going into the concentration camp. And of course, they didn't last long, and I don't even think he was aware of it, because it was all so scattered. It wasn't like there was information that you could find out, other than the fact that, like, the family gets carted off and then separated, and then he had that hope that kept him going.
That's right.
Quite incredible. So what I've done, Doug, is I've got a series of different quotes from the book that you picked out and I picked out, and we kind of and I just like to share some of them, and maybe we could share it and then talk a little bit about it. Does that sound? Yeah. Good. Now, before I do that, let me just give you a little bit of a plug here, because you also wrote the book, Take Life by the Helm, Proven Strategies for Gaining Control, How to Live a Courageous, Adventurous, and Deliberate Life. And I love that word, deliberate life, intentionality. And that's the choice thing too. So, at the time you gifted these books, and I brought them home, and I just want to say thank you again for that. But tell people about your book.
The book, and I love, it's all about this idea in life, regardless of our circumstance. It's a metaphor, right? The helm is a steering wheel of a ship. And that steering wheel really represents, despite everything that's going on, how can I be the hero in my story? And how can I ultimately, everything can be taken away from a person. But the one thing that can't is my ability to choose my attitude, my thinking in a situation. And so the book really talks about how we can be just slammed. And I mean, right now, any person, everybody's fighting a battle. Everybody's fighting a battle at some level. And that book is about instilling hope and giving some tools and some strategies that help right our thinking. You mentioned the ship that, who's at the helm? If nobody's at the helm, man, that ship is going to just get caught in the doldrums, get ran over by the Queen Mary, get stuck in coral or whatever the case. And so the book really is about the human spirit and about rising above.
Yeah, and really, it becomes a choice. Are you gonna step up and take the wheel of your own life, the helm of your own life, or are you going to, play the victim or allow others to steer for you? Because that's what'll happen, or you'll just end up drifting aimlessly. So anyway, that was important because again, I was at a kind of a point when I knew I needed to take I knew I needed to take control, and because I had been like most people, my life just evolved in a way where, I went and I did something after high school. And then after that, I went and did another job and then another job. And then I got very lucky with the Forrest Gump gig that lasted for 15 years. But as that was coming to an end, it was like I looked back and I went, oh my gosh, all I've done is just sort of, took advantage of opportunities, but I never really, steered in. I just, was at the right place at the right time. So then it was like, well, what do you do next? And so anyway, those were great teaching moments. So I also recommend you go get that book. You said, so two books people need to get is Take Life by the Helm and Man's Search for Meaning.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's a good read, and if you need a good dose of hope that helps you perform at a higher level and be more grateful and live in the present, then it'll help them on that journey. Absolutely.
Good, very good. All righty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the first quote, and I have 8. I don't know whether we'll get through them all, but the first 2 quotes are I'm going to kind of share one, and then I'll share the other, just because they're so similar to each other in terms of the message. So let's go ahead and let's see if we can make this happen. There it is. So the first one, our greatest freedom is the freedom to choose our attitude. Our greatest freedom is the freedom to choose our attitude. And the second one, again, similar. Let's see, did I do that? Let me do this. Here we go. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And that, to me, Doug, those 2 quotes really talk about the essence of who Victor Frankl was. It was a choice that he was making. What would you like to share?
Wow. I mean, there is a crux right there. If that's the only thing that you take away, right, from hearing this conversation that we're having today, that notion there, because here is a fundamental core of us getting off course, of us letting go of the helm. And it's the core that we have this false belief that our environment, our circumstance, or other people dictate our happiness, that as soon as the environment changes, I'll be happy, or as soon as the situation is different, or as soon as this person just changes, as soon as my my boss or my wife or my husband, whatever the case, changes, then I can be happy. And that is it's a lie. That's not responsible, because then our happiness is just an ebb and flow with what's outside of us. And Victor Frankl talks about this notion that there comes a time in our life when those tectonic shifts happen, big or small, that we really shift inside and say, you know what, I've got to get in tune with what is most true for me. And this is that freedom. And here it is. William James talked about it. As a Man Thinketh, get a chance to read that book, another great one. But that idea that I've got this freedom inside, that I can really direct my thinking. And in our brain, and I like to call it, we have these mind pirates, talk about in the book, right? These mind pirates that come in and they like to hijack us, right? They're going to take over the ship. And, and then we lose control. These mind pirates are thinking. I think Victor's alluding to that, but he's saying also that we have our mind pilot, if you will. And our mind pilot, every minute of our day saying, hey, so where are we going? And by default, if I allow my default brain to direct me, 9 out of 10 times, it's going to go over to negative thinking. It's going to go over to imprisoned thinking. And then come to find out, I'm the one who imprisons myself with my own thinking. That's what Victor's saying. Your thinking in a death camp will either keep you alive or it will kill you. It can, if the Nazi guards don't do it for you right at the time. But also then the mind pilot saying, where are we going? And if you don't tell your mind where you want it to go, by default, it goes over here. And oftentimes you say, hey, where do you want to go today? Where do you want to go this next hour? And very often we say, well, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want that. All the brain hears is all that negative. So if I tell you, under no circumstances, think of a fluorescent pink elephant being pushed off a monorail in Germany. Do not think about this pink elephant, okay? I don't want you, you've already thought about it. You can't tell your brain what you don't want it to think. You've got to say, mind, here's where I want to go. Victor Frankl was very deliberate, intentional and very deliberate about where he was going in his day. And he made it very clear, mind pilot, because it'll go anywhere you tell it. And he's saying, here's where I want to go. We can't leave it to chance just to wake up and say, man, I hope I have a good day today. I hope things go well. I hope, the winds are favorable. We've got to be really clear. And I think that's what Victor Frankl is saying. You've got to direct your thinking, your attitude, it's yours. But if we think it's outside of us, we're going to be miserable. And when that shift takes place, we're going, really? I can choose my attitude regardless of my circumstance. And it's a practice. We're human. We will fail. We have hard things in our hearts. But we can with practice. And that would be a practice every day. When you're not feeling like you're going a good direction, pause. And look, am I just allowing the mind pilot to take me? Or am I saying, hey, let's get back at the helm. I want to steer in this direction. And that's who I want to become. That's where I want to go. That's where I want to head.
Awesome. It's really the law of attraction. We haven't mentioned it, the law of attraction specifically, but I talk about that quite a bit with other conversations I've had. And so anyway, let's not deviate into that specifically, other than just say that there's a very commonality between that whole, where we're steering. And I loved what you said about, that, and this is the law of attraction, negative thoughts like, I don't want this to happen. Well, that's what you're then focusing on, as opposed to where do I want to go and how do I stay true? And boy, did he, his life, the testament that he gives in being able to overcome and stay focused. Now he was a MD, he was a psychiatrist. He had, a better set of tools than maybe the average person. Right. But he still managed to do it. Pretty impressive.
You know what? Along that same line, right? He managed to do it, and you're right. It's so impressive. And I think the thing that is really awesome, he was at odds. Freud and them, they rubbed shoulders a bit, and he was at odds with Freud. Freud had some great ideas, but I think Victor is saying, hey, listen, because Freud was out pain and pleasure, right? That was kind of his gig, id and superego and all that. But Victor says, hey, our ultimate driving force is not to seek pleasure. We like to seek pleasure, as humans at our lower level, right? Our lizard brain kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But he said, hey, this in the absence of meaning, even in a death camp, people who survived and thrived and didn't go into neurosis and whatnot, guess what? They had a meaning to fight for. We have something to fight for today. In this moment, how can I honor this moment if that is my meaning and my purpose right now? Because it is not in the absence of pleasure, right? Or excuse me, in the absence of meaning, let me get that right. In the absence of meaning, we seek after pleasure. And that's most people are just zombies. We just wake up, talk a little bit about that in the book as well. We just wait, we're just zombies. We're not awake. We're not alive. We're going, hey, this is your life. And this puppy is passing. Don't wait any longer. Get at that helm and take that thing and say, how can I savor? How can I honor my suffering that I'm experiencing right now? 2 rails of a train track. One rail is growth and happiness, and the other rail is grief and sorrow. And you cannot go through life on a monorail, right? It is, in order for that train to move forward, you've got to have both tracks. And Victor's saying, yes, we've got to honor our suffering, and it's real and it's legitimate, but we can also simultaneously have growth and happiness and peace that comes from growing and engaging in an activity that enlists our full power. So important, meaning he would say, once our basic needs have been met physically, psychologically, we are in a crisis of meaning, in my opinion. That's what I help, leaders or coaching people. Man, when we get down to that, it changes, that meaning changes everything, because we have a will and what we're working for, and we know that.
It's interesting, our current situation in the world, specifically in our country.
Yeah.
Our basic needs have all been met. Nobody's, people aren't starving in other parts of the world, yes, but in the United States, not so much so. And so there's been this, what we'll call it a search for meaning, a search for direction. And boy, is it chaotic at the moment, because, there's the subconscious reaction going on, along with what's like some kind of an awakening. And boy, is it not, they're not playing nice with each other at the moment.
Yeah. And Victor would say that very often, he talked about, Austria, his home state, right? And he said it's a welfare state where they give the basic needs and try to help. But he said, but the one thing that they can't give, and the one thing that people need, is a meaning or a purpose. And sometimes I think we make it, yes, it can be a particular calling, right? Or whatnot. But more often, that is good, but it is in this moment, how do I honor this situation? How can I be my best self in this situation? And even go to my future self. How would my future self handle this situation right now? Victor he talks about this idea, right? Of, go to your future self. I'm struggling right now. I don't have any clue how to get through this. Well, let's go to your best self versus your stressed self. And let's ask your best self, how do I get through that? You mentioned the law of attraction. Scientifically, we know in the brain, we have this reticular activating system that it's a goal. There's three major parts of our brain, one of which is my goal-oriented system to survive. All three parts of our brain are to help us survive. We also read in Holy Writ, the Bible, as you sow, so shall you reap, as a man thinketh. We see this idea, where Buddha or Lao Tzu or Jesus talks about this notion. Hey, if you can get this concept of faith, right, you're thinking, right? Because faith is simply this. It is believing that what you can't see, and I'll add what you feel, will happen. It's believing that what you can't see will happen. Well, what's the definition of fear? It's believing that what you can't see will happen. And it will be true either way. We go into scarcity or we go into abundance. And our goal over time, and you can tell by the state of your heart, right? The emotions. Put that hand on that heart and slow down and breathe. What's happening inside of me, right? I want to do my best to train. There are the two rails of the track, but I want to train myself daily, my thinking. And Victor, boy, what a pressure cooker to train your thinking, right? And have that hope and have that faith to say, that's where I want to go.
Let's go ahead to, let's put up another quote. Let's see, let's try this. There we go. And this is one that you didn't have, Doug, but I wanted to, this one probably more than anyone affected me. And it's the word stimulus. Between stimulus and response, or no, it's the word space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In the space, there is a power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That idea of the space was new to me when I read it, or it never was explained to me in that kind of a way. But I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, I actually, it comes back to that choice. If I just give a little bit of space, then it's the choice between reacting or responding. So responding or reacting. And so anyway, I just, again, powerful.
And I think that's perhaps my favorite Victor Frankl quote. And I realized yesterday I didn't send that to you. So I'm glad you put that on there. I think it is the crux of his whole work, because he's basically saying, hey, this is the thing that makes us human. There is a stimulus. Something happens to us. And many of us just get in that zombie mode where we just respond. Stimulus, response, right? Something happens. And we are just completely and totally controlled by our external environment. Now, granted, we are influenced by our external environment, but the shift comes when we go internal locus, right? Internal control here. And Victor's talking about, hey, there's the stimulus, then there is that space, right? And that's what makes us human, because we have choice. Now, you look at other animals, right? They don't have the choice. It's inherent. They stimulus, they respond. It's programmed, right? Where we as humans, we can choose. And in a way, that is a spiritual practice, to be able to pause and then be able to say, ooh, here's who I want to be. I want to practice this. Now we're going to fail, and let's just rebound and keep going. But between that stimulus and response is choice. But I also love this idea that he says, but that's where growth is. And he's really, if you were to summarize, he talks about 3 major areas that you find meaning in life, and they branch out into all the other areas. But one is that growth. We need to struggle. In life, we're either green and we're growing, or we're ripe and we're rotting. And we need to have a task or something that we engage in that is hard and that we're growing, but it enlists our powers. The other one he talks about is, we've got to be able to create, to bring things into this life, and then he talks about connection with other people. But the growth, I should also say, is the meaning, right? Where we find meaning and purpose. And then there's creation, doing some task that brings me to life, and then connection with other people.
We'll follow up one more quote here, similar to, or a follow-up from the last one. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And that's really the idea that you are just talking about, Doug, where, we have challenge, we have these struggles, the 2 rails that you mentioned, and are we going to go on that negative rail, or are we going to, go to the positive rail? Which one are we going to, focus on? So changing that situation.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Because that's really the idea in life. In life, there are facts and there are problems. Now, do you solve a fact? No, you don't solve a fact. You adjust to it. You adapt to it. You try to influence it. Now, by definition, a problem you solve, right? By definition, it has a solution. And that would mean that Victor Frankl saying, if you can't change this external environment, it's going to force you to change one thing, and that's yourself. And what does that mean? My thinking towards that, to where it will empower me to become the person I want to become. And that's one of the greatest questions that we can ask ourselves. Despite what's happened in my past, despite what I've done or what I haven't done, who do I want to become in this moment right now? And that would be Victor with that. I've got a choice to make, and it can be hard at times.
There's the next 2 quotes, and we're coming to the end, and so we'll just go through these.
They're so much fun, Steve.
I know it's great, but let's just go try to get through this, and then we'll come back again and do it again sometime. But so these 2 quotes are very similar. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And let me go to the next quote right away. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. If your life has that meaning that he talked about in that previous quote, then the how, will take care of itself. And let me just go back to the original one. Let's see. Wait a minute. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. So go ahead and take it away.
And so, that idea that life becomes unbearable, again, it's going to my thinking, the attitude that I'm going to choose to look at that. Because if I can find meaning, and then I can live with responsibility, right? And Victor Frankl, he talked about this idea that, hey, you all in the USA have the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast, and he says you need a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast, because you can't have one without the other. You just can't have freedom that's run amok, right? That out of balance, no harmony. You need responsibility as well, but between these 2, then you can find meaning, that even in our suffering, that there's a purpose, that it's not in vain, that something good can come from this. And at times, I mentioned earlier, it's hard to find that, but we can. It's our choice to say, even the mere fact that I'm suffering this or doing it with honor as best I can to honor this suffering that I have can be a purpose.
You mentioned the statue of responsibility. I had forgotten about that, but I ended up getting connected with someone a few years ago, maybe 5 or more, and there was a movement to try to actually make that happen, to build some kind of statue of responsibility. Yeah. Have you heard anything recently about that?
I have in my office, another office that I have a statue of that statue of responsibility, right? And it's two hands clasping each other, meaning we are responsible to others as well. And it's not just about, sometimes we see in our world today, it's all about me, 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 me. Well, we need to take care of ourselves. And Victor Frankl said, yeah, that's good. But you will never find peace ultimately or happiness in this life. No drug, no alcohol, no nothing. And unless we are responsible and to help others in the process, right? But we need to take care of ourselves. But the last I'd heard, and this has been a few years ago, I went to a gala with that, and the last I'd heard it was still going. I haven't heard in a number of years now, though. I hope it is. That would be really neat to see that.
We had earlier on in the conversation, we talked about the challenge, the 2 rails, and this quote really speaks to the challenge of life, to this, I don't want to say struggle, but to the, but what is to give light must endure burning. And it's really the physical description of what is the being a light, requires us to go through some kind of a transformational process. And the burning is obviously that what happens with fire.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Right. And yet, so there will be suffering, but it's that suffering that then opens us up. If we can embrace it, we don't have to live with it and seek it out. But if we can live and understand that, hey, we're here to be a light. And my friend Kirk Weisler, he just recently released a book, and it's about a boy who finds a piece of broken mirror after World War II. And if you go look up Kirk Weisler, you can get the book. It's an amazing book with an amazing story. But he talks about how this little boy uses this light to reflect from the sun light into places that would never have light ever if it weren't for that mirror reflecting it into that dark place. Well, you get the metaphor. The boy is not the light, the sun is, but he reflects that in life. And I think like a candle is none the less bright from lighting another candle. And yet it is our challenges that hone us so that we can live in that light, if you will. And right now, you think about this, the darkest dark can be cut through physiologically, scientific fact, it will cut through the darkest of dark. It doesn't matter how small that light is. It will cut through that. And like you mentioned, things have happened this past year that are unimaginable, right? We're just like, what? And we need that hope. We don't need another person running around, in a powerless victim mindset. Was Victor Frankl a victim? Yes, he was. He was. Did he live with victim mentality? No, he did not. And I think that's what lights. People are drawn to hope and to light in a huge way, where ultimately our lives are not just a task, right? I asked a guy recently, I said, so what are you looking forward to? What's bringing you to life? Meaning, purpose. Long story short, he said, I get home, I sit down, shoot up electronic heroin, okay, TV, video games, whatever, social media, and crack a few beers. Okay. And I said, what do you look for on the weekend? He said, I look forward to having some friends over now. I know this is COVID stuff, right? But, and I said, and we eat. And I said, and what are you looking forward to? And cracking a few beers. I'm going, so your meaning and purpose. Okay. It's great to be with family, but I mean, ultimately, and that's just part of it, but your goal, your overriding goal is to crack a few beers. And he goes, I've never thought of it like this. I said, well, nothing wrong, as long as you're not driving and hurt anyone, right? But there's more to life than cracking a few beers and shooting electronic heroin, right? Our life becomes a mission, not a task.
Here's the last quote that I had, and we managed to get through them all. Love is the ultimate and highest goal to which man can aspire. The salvation of man is through love and in love. And we let's acknowledge that Victor uses the masculine form, but really we're talking about for all people, not just for man. It's for human, the human experience. Love is the ultimate and highest goal for the human experience to aspire.
That, I think that's it, right? And you think about the beginning, the middle, and end of any problem, I'm going to say ultimately, some way, shape, or form, it's going to be through love. And I think he was right. Hey, you read in the New Testament, love your neighbor as you would love yourself. Often we forget ourselves and often we forget our neighbor. Like you just mentioned, that we need to, love is the ultimate. And when we can walk in love and self-compassion for ourselves, it's a lot easier to give it to other people. We can even understand people from a different political view than ours, as opposed to judging and fighting. They feel just as strongly as you do about your views, and they feel just as entrenched in it as you feel. So you're right, that love and allowing others to be there and being able to feel that for ourselves.
We're going to kind of conclude here by just showing the two books one more time. Man's Search for Meaning by Victor Frankl. 12 million copies in print. I'm guessing that's like from like the very first printing back in 1959. I don't know that for sure, but obviously there's been new editions that have been put out, and different people have kind of interpreted or written the foreword and brought it up to date a little bit. And then of course Doug's book, Take Life by the Helm, and thanks for bringing your helm right in here to show us, because it's a great metaphor. Anybody who's going to live an empowered and what do you say? Deliberate life, intentional, deliberate life. I mean, you have to be the captain. You have to be steering the ship, your own ship. So
we could say, Steve, go to helm and get your ship together.
Go to helm and get your ship together. I love that. Very good. Wow. Well, cool. This has been fun. Hey, Doug, this has been a lot of fun. Let me invite people to go to DougSpeaks.com. You'll find out more about Doug. He's been a speaker. He's been a psychotherapist. Now, you don't use that as one word. You use that as two words, psychotherapist.
Yeah.
What is the reason you do that? Because I have an interpretation, but I want you to give your interpretation.
It's a play on words, right? Hey, psycho, meaning, hey, in this life, I think we've all got to be a little bit crazy to be sane. And I mean crazy enough to live from your core, crazy enough to be who you are, so you can. And when I say this, I like to say, live courageously. It's the word I've coined. And to live from your core and do it outrageously. You get one life, live this puppy, live it and do it courageously, right? So when I say psycho, I mean, you got to be a little bit crazy to be sane, because the world would have you in a box. If you look to the world to say who you are and how you're supposed to act, and you're living up to everybody else's expectations, right? Addicted to their approval, that's no life at all. That's a life of imprisonment. And to break free, literally break free from that and say, I want to live from my core, meaning purpose. That's the core.
You used the term electronic heroin. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I gave up TV about 4 years ago, just because, I just cut it off one day and I said, I can't take it. And of course I'm exposed to it because, we all are. But I shut the thing down because it was, and just because it was not healthy. It wasn't helping me. I wasn't feeding myself the kind of information that made me feel good. Too much of that information was not good for me. So I said, I made the choice. And then when I decided last year, at the beginning of the year 2019, to go ahead and leave Montana, to go back out in the world, travel around the American Gumption Project, it was really inspired because the news, the mainstream, what we hear, what our political leaders and what the media were feeding me on a daily basis. And again, I was trying to avoid it, and yet you still see it. And it had nothing to do with my life on a day in and day out basis. And it had nothing to do with the lives of the people that I came in contact with. So none of the things that they were being talked about affected me personally or most of the people. And yet it was being talked about day in and day out as if it was like the truth. And and so I thought the American Gumption Project is all about telling happy stories, telling good stories, not like feeding that monster of electronic heroin, as you said, but creating some kind of a new juice that is healthier for us.
That's right.
Anyway, that's
your mission, and that's what is so beautiful about you, Steve. You haven't given up, and I know there's been battles, and that human spirit that's within you continues to rise above until your dying breath. I can predict, right? That's you.
Well, thank you. It's when we first met, I didn't know what that was, and it took a few years to figure that out. But you were very influential in helping me, lay down some of the foundational pieces. And the Victor Frankl philosophy is really, at the core of what gumption is all about, and it's really it's the number 2 choice or the number 2 life lesson from the movie Forrest Gump, and that's the choices that we make. So so very good. Well, thank you. Gosh, last minute, people can find you at DougSpeaks.com. What are you doing these days? What are obviously the life that you had up until COVID changed because of, going out and speaking in front of groups no longer was an option. How have you been using this year to better yourself and to put yourself in a position to be stronger when things return to whatever the next new normal becomes?
Yeah, exactly. So I really help executive teams, leadership teams to get unstuck and to become what's possible for them, right? I also do coaching packages with individuals, with leaders or those who are wanting to improve their life, right? And so I do still keynote speak. I've done some hybrid events. I've done virtual events like this. And yet I still, still moving forward. Boy, you had to pivot on a dime, and everything collapsed. It was quite an adjustment. I was on the verge of the biggest account ever with speaking and coaching and that COVID. But it's like, you got to have that gumption, right? You got to just keep moving forward, man. Just keep moving forward. So it's been, I love what I do, and I feel blessed to be able to do it still.
Very good. Well, thanks, Doug. This is fun. We talked about it a month or more ago when we kind of reached out, and I said, hey, would you like to talk about Victor Frankl? And you said yes. And then we found the date, and I've been looking forward to this. And I just want to say thank you. This was a lot of fun. So
thank you. Good vibe.
And unlike anything I've ever done before, in that we focused, on someone else, primarily their philosophies and teaching, but it's at the heart of what, gumption is all about. It's at the heart of taking life by the helm.
Right.
And so, he really is that's why there's 12 million copies in print, right? It's been influential.
And counting. Yeah.
Very good.
Well, thank you, Steve. Good vibes, good blessings your way, and to those listeners. Let's keep going in this moment just for today. Honor it and make it amazing.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We will hopefully we'll invite you back here again sometime.
Okay.
When things return to that new normal, we'll check back in with you, and we'll see what life is like for you. Okay. Thanks.
Right. Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that's Doug Neilsen. His website is DougSpeaks.com. Go ahead and check him out. Again, thank you, Doug, for joining us this morning. Thanks for the influence that you had on my life and for helping me when gumption was really more just an idea, but I hadn't really defined what gumption was, or I had a rough idea, but I hadn't filled in all the pieces, and the whole idea of, the choice thing from Victor Frankl, and then taking life by the helm in terms of me needing to be in charge of steering my own gumption ship. That struck home. So excellent, Doug. Thank you so much. All righty. That's it. Now, next week on Monday, I will be here doing a live show, although I don't have a guest, so I might do a monologue segment only. We'll just see. Tuesday is Amy Van Linge. She is a life coach, speaker. She is an advocate for conscious parenting, and she's a spiritual adventurer. She's got a great story. So looking forward to that. And then Wednesday, Tamra Oviatt, speaker, author, healer, and her brand of healing is called Sacred Activations. And just think of it as a computer download. And, she's directly connecting with source energy and helping people activate new energies within themselves. And these things don't take years. These things are instant upgrades, and then they're ongoing. It's like a meta program and running in the background. And so she's going to explain all that on Wednesday. It's going to be a fun conversation. That's it, everybody. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.